Hands up right now. Do not move. You reach for anything. And this ends badly for you. Officer Marcus Reyes did not wait for a reaction. He fired the command the moment he stepped out of his patrol car. Voice hard, breath tight, tone built from years of unresolved fear. There was no greeting, no explanation, no effort to assess the situation. Only a rigid authority he clung to because it felt safer than admitting he was losing control inside his own mind. Before diving into this story, tell me where you're watching from. And make sure to subscribe to the channel and give me a like. It helps bring these stories to more people who care about justice and accountability. Jamal Kingston kept both hands visible, steady, and open. He recognized the tone instantly. It was the same tone he heard at 17 when an officer pressed him against a school wall and accused him of stealing his own backpack. He learned long ago that sometimes the danger wasn't the gun. It was the mind holding it. So he did what experience taught him. He slowed his voice. He chose his words carefully. Officer, my name is Deputy U.S., Marshal Jamal Kingston. My credentials are in my jacket. Reyes didn't respond. His jaw locked, his shoulders stiffened. He stared at Kingston as if the introduction itself was a threat. The badge, the calm tone, the age, the confidence. It all clashed with the story running through his head. That story had been building since 2008, when he watched his father die during a traffic stop gone wrong. Since then, every stop carried the weight of that night. He never admitted how deeply it shaped him. He only reacted. And right now, he reacted like a man who saw danger where none existed. You keep those hands up. You do not reach for anything. Not a badge. Not a phone. Nothing, Reyes said, voice sharper, words moving faster than his judgment. He didn't ask where Kingston was headed. He didn't ask for identification. He gave orders meant to freeze the moment because he didn't trust himself to handle what came next. Kingston breathed slowly. He knew the principles of de-escalation because he had taught them to younger deputies. He knew the signs of an officer under emotional strain because he had seen it on raids, on transfers, even in federal training rooms. Reyes showed all of them at once. The tightened jaw, the shallow breath, the refusal to listen, the insistence on control even when no threat existed. Kingston kept his eyes steady and said, "Officer, I want to comply. I want you to feel safe. I need to take out my badge to confirm who I am." "You're not reaching for anything," Reyes repeated, voice rising without reason. "I'll tell you when you move." There was no protocol behind the command. It came from instinct, not training. Reyes carried 20 complaints on his record. 17 involved racial profiling. Supervisors documented a pattern of anger, but none of it reached correction. He refused therapy twice. He avoided conversations about his father's death. He held on to blame and fear, as if letting go would remove the last connection he had left to the man who raised him. And now, with his marriage collapsing and the threat of losing his son in court, he grabbed control wherever he could find it. Kingston saw all of that in seconds. He had spent 20 years studying people under pressure, cartel lieutenants, federal fugitives, angry fathers, desperate teenagers. He recognized the look of someone who wasn't reacting to the present moment, but to wounds buried far deeper. That recognition guided every word he spoke. "Officer, I am not resisting. I am not reaching. I need you to tell me what you want me to do next." Reyes didn't answer the question. He moved to the passenger side instead. Scanning the interior of the car without cause, he didn't see contraband, he didn't see weapons, he didn't see anything that justified suspicion, but he never relied on facts. He relied on feeling. Feeling told him that the man in front of him didn't fit the picture he believed belonged in this neighborhood. Feeling told him that people who looked like Kingston drove different streets, spoke different ways, lived different stories. That belief carried him more forcefully than any training manual ever had. Kingston watched him circle the car, and with every step Reyes took, Kingston felt the situation lose another piece of stability. He knew the playbook. He knew how these moments shifted. One wrong movement, one misread gesture, one sentence taken out of context. That was all it took. And Reyes wasn't thinking, he was reacting. "Step out of the car," Reyes ordered. Kingston didn't rush. "I'll step out slowly, hands visible at all times. I need you to confirm you understand that I am a federal officer." Reyes ignored the statement. "I said out." Kingston opened the door with deliberate control. He stood upright, palms facing forward, posture calm. He looked like a man who had spent his life keeping tense moments from becoming tragic ones. But he also looked like someone who understood how fragile this moment truly was. He spoke again, voice low, measured, grounded. "Officer Reyes, I am reaching for nothing. I am following every instruction." Reyes didn't hear his own name spoken, or maybe he did and chose to ignore it. He moved closer, tension radiating off each step. He didn't ask questions. He didn't verify credentials. He didn't follow procedure. He relied on a belief that had been building since childhood. Danger comes first. Clarity comes later. Kingston held his ground. There was no aggression in his stance. Only patience anchored by decades of knowing how quickly authority could become reckless in the wrong hands. Reyes finally spoke again, voice low but unstable. "What are you doing in this area?" The question exposed the assumption beneath everything. Not who are you, not where are your credentials, not what is your destination, but what are you doing here? As if the ground itself required permission, Kingston answered with steady resolve. "I'm working, and I need you to verify who I am so we can both go home safely." It didn't register. Reyes only stepped closer. His hand drifted even nearer to his holster, driven not by threat, but by the memory of a father he couldn't save. His judgment narrowed to a tunnel, and in that narrow space, he made the first decision of the next 35 minutes, one that would ignite a chain of events he couldn't stop. And Kingston, who had spent decades protecting strangers from danger, now stood inches away from danger wearing a badge. Officer Marcus Reyes kept his hand near his holster, as if any small gesture might justify what he already feared. "What are you doing here?" he said again, sharper, as if repeating it could fill the gaps in his own reasoning. Jamal Kingston kept both hands visible, steady and calm. "Officer, I'm Deputy U.S. Marshal Kingston. I have my badge and identification. They're inside my jacket pocket. I'm asking for permission to reach for them." Reyes didn't grant it. He lifted his chin as if authority alone could override the need for logic. "I don't buy it. I've seen enough fake badges to last me a lifetime. Keep those hands right where they are." Kingston recognized the shift in tone. He had taught new deputies how to read an officer losing emotional balance. Reyes's words carried signs of a man already in the red zone, instead of asking further. Kingston tried a different approach. "Sir, I need you to call your supervisor. This is a federal matter, and I'm on an active assignment." Reyes's eyes flicked with irritation. "You don't tell me how to run a stop. I'm the only supervisor you need right now." The clock moved, and the tension grew heavier. The stop had barely begun. Yet the dynamic had already crossed into territory Kingston had hoped never to face again. He kept his breathing controlled. He kept his voice measured. "Officer, please listen. My credentials are real. You can verify them in 30 seconds. I need you to remain calm with me." Reyes stepped closer. "Calm? Don't tell me about calm. You think I don't know how this works? You think I've never seen someone talk their way out of trouble before?" Kingston answered quietly. "I'm not in trouble. I'm a federal officer doing my job." Reyes leaned in. "Not until I say you are." Those words struck Kingston harder than the volume. He'd heard lines like that from criminals he arrested, not from officers sworn to protect the law. He remained still, hands open, as he reminded himself that escalation would only fuel the officer's fear. "I'm cooperating. Officer Reyes, fully. Tell me your next instruction." Reyes didn't know his next instruction. His mind chased instincts rooted more in memory than fact. Dispatch chatter about cartel activity kept replaying in his thoughts. His father's final breaths replayed behind that. Every shadow felt like a threat waiting to strike. Kingston didn't know the specifics of that trauma, but he sensed its weight in every command Reyes issued. "Step back from the car," Reyes said abruptly. Kingston complied, moving slow and deliberate. "Turn around," Reyes added, posture rigid. Kingston turned, palms open. "You're making this into something it doesn't need to be," Kingston said quietly. Reyes snapped back. "You don't get to decide that." Kingston held his ground. "Then call someone who can—" That suggestion hit Reyes harder than Kingston intended. It reminded him of supervisors who questioned his judgment, therapists he refused to visit, a wife who begged him to get help. He rejected all of it, and now he rejected Kingston's request too. Instead, Reyes reached into the Taurus without permission. Pulling open the door and searching the front seat, Kingston spoke firmly but controlled. "Officer, you are not authorized to search my vehicle without probable cause." Reyes ignored him. He opened the jacket lying on the seat. Inside was Kingston's badge, his federal ID, and his backup Glock in its holster. Reyes grabbed the badge first, stared at it without absorbing what it meant, then lifted the Glock as if it proved his suspicions. "So you do have a weapon," he said, voice rising. Kingston answered calmly, "Yes, a federally issued sidearm. I'm a U.S. Marshal. I told you that. You now have proof." Reyes didn't hear any of it. He registered only the weapon and the narrative he already believed. "You were reaching for this," he said, though Kingston never moved toward the gun once. "This is why I don't trust these stops." Then he found the encrypted phone still connected to an active FBI call. Its screen showed part of an open channel. He lifted it with a look of triumph. "And what's all this? Illegal comms?" Kingston almost stepped forward but stopped himself. "That is a secure link with the FBI. You are interfering with an operation you don't understand." Reyes's jaw tightened. "You think saying FBI makes you untouchable? Not today." Kingston saw the situation sliding into something far more dangerous. He tried again. "Officer Reyes, listen to me. The person on the other end of that call is coordinating a federal pursuit. Your interference puts lives at risk." Reyes shook his head. "The only thing at risk is me letting you trick your way out of this." Kingston spoke with urgency. "I'm not tricking you. You're putting yourself in harm's way. Put the phone down." But the damage was done. The open channel broadcasted their exact location. A cartel crew monitoring hacked police traffic caught the signal instantly. Reyes didn't know that. Kingston did. He felt the danger tightening around them, invisible but immediate. "Officer Reyes," Kingston said sharply, "you need to move. You need to call for backup. You need to." A shot cracked the air. Kingston flinched as glass exploded behind him. The windshield shattered. Sharp fragments struck his shoulder. He staggered but stayed upright. Reyes froze, stunned by the sound he didn't expect. Kingston's instincts activated instantly. "Sniper! Move now! Get down! Call it in!" Reyes blinked, disoriented. "What just happened?" Kingston raised his voice. "Your radio leak exposed us. We are under active fire." Officers Ramirez and Patel arrived at that exact moment, skidding to a halt when they saw Kingston bleeding from the shoulder and Reyes fumbling for control he never had. "Marcus! What are you doing?" Ramirez shouted, running toward them. "Verify his ID right now!" Reyes spun toward her. "I'm handling it!" Ramirez refused to back off. "Handling it? A federal officer is bleeding and your radio is wide open." Patel's voice shook as he spoke. "We need medical. We need backup." Someone is shooting. Kingston gritted his teeth through the pain. Call for a code Alpha 7. Now! Reyes still hadn't moved. He stood frozen between denial and recognition, unable to accept that his choices triggered the attack. Ramirez shoved past him and took control. Patel. Call it in. Kingston, stay with me. Reyes, step back before you make this worse. For a moment. No one breathed. Then Reyes stumbled backward as if waking up inside a nightmare he created himself. Kingston pressed a hand to his bleeding shoulder and said quietly, "This didn't have to happen, but it already had, and the next 25 minutes would only drive the consequences deeper." Officer Ramirez pressed a hand against Kingston's uninjured arm and kept her voice steady. "Stay with me. Don't move unless you have to." Kingston nodded. Though his shoulder throbbed from the sniper's impact, he focused on controlling his breathing, reminding himself that panic never saved anyone. Patel was still fumbling with his radio, struggling to form the words, "Shots fired, officer down, no, civilian, no, federal officer hit. We need immediate response." His voice shook, but the message got through. Dispatch answered sharply, demanding clarification. Patel tried again. "Active shooter targeting the stop. Unknown direction. Send units now." Reyes backed away, his hands trembling. He looked at Kingston as if trying to rewrite what he had just seen. "Why would anyone shoot at you?" he said, voice cracking. Kingston answered with controlled urgency. "Because you broadcast my location. That phone was on an encrypted FBI call. You opened it. You exposed the channel. They were listening." Reyes blinked hard. Who was listening? Kingston forced himself to focus through the pain. A cartel crew. They hacked LAPD frequencies months ago. We've been tracking how they monitor police traffic. You just gave them my exact position. Ramirez turned toward Reyes. "You opened an active federal call?" "Marcus." "What were you thinking?" Reyes stammered. I was checking for proof. I was trying to make sure he wasn't lying." Kingston didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You didn't verify my badge. You didn't call it in. You searched my car illegally. You ignored every procedure. And now a sniper knows exactly where we are." Reyes swallowed, unable to form a response. His mind fought between pride, guilt, and panic, each one ripping at him faster than he could contain. Another distant shot cracked the air, not hitting anyone but close enough that all three officers ducked instinctively. Ramirez turned back to Kingston. "We need to move you behind the cruiser." Kingston nodded. "I can walk. Just keep your eyes open." Ramirez and Patel helped him toward the side of the cruiser. "Keeping low." Reyes hesitated before following, unsure if he belonged in the scramble he created. Kingston noticed the hesitation and looked at him directly. "Officer Reyes, you're not out of this. You need to listen now." Reyes didn't answer. He only nodded, shaken. Kingston steadied himself behind the cruiser. "Listen carefully. There's a high-value cartel target moving through Los Angeles. I was assigned to intercept. My location had to stay dark. The moment you opened that call, they traced it. That sniper round wasn't random." Ramirez stared at Reyes. "This is what happens when you don't verify ID. This is what happens when fear replaces protocol." Reyes ran a hand over his face. This wasn't supposed to happen, I thought." Kingston cut him off before he sank further into confusion. Thinking isn't the problem. Assuming is. Patel was still working the radio, multiple units en route, tactical instructed to hold perimeter. Ramirez looked at Kingston. "What do we do until they get here?" Kingston answered without hesitation. "You keep eyes on every rooftop line you can see. You keep your radio secure, and you stop treating me like a suspect." Reyes stiffened, almost reacting defensively, but the weight of what already happened silenced whatever he tried to say. Ramirez gestured to the items Reyes had pulled from the Taurus. "Marcus, give me his badge and ID. Now." Reyes hesitated, then handed them over. Ramirez checked them quickly. This is real. Federal seal. Valid clearance. Active duty. This is not a fake. She turned back to Kingston. Sir, I apologize. This should never have happened. Kingston nodded once. Apologies can wait. We need to keep this from getting worse. But things were already getting worse. A burst of encrypted chatter came through Kingston's damaged phone, faint but still audible. A voice speaking code phrases tied to El Diablo's crew. Kingston recognized one phrase immediately. They're redeploying, he said. They're adjusting positions based on our location. They think I'm vulnerable now. Ramirez exhaled sharply. Marcus, this is on you. We told you to verify. We told you to wait. You didn't listen. Reyes clenched his jaw. I was trying to protect myself. Kingston looked at him. From what? A man sitting calmly with his hands up? Reyes didn't answer. His eyes darted, searching for anything that could justify his earlier decisions. Nothing did. The silence forced him to confront a truth he had avoided for years. He didn't know how to separate threat from memory. Kingston refocused on the task at hand. I need access to your secure radio. I have to warn the FBI that the channel was compromised. Ramirez handed over her shoulder mic. Use mine. Marcus doesn't need to talk right now. Kingston accepted it and gave the emergency call sign. Marshal Kingston requesting immediate patch to federal operations. Critical breach. Dispatch paused, then connected him. A federal operator answered with rapid urgency, asking for details. Kingston laid it out quickly. Compromised comms, exposure caused live sniper fire, location unsafe, Operation Alpha compromised, requesting reroute for all units, the operator answered. We're initiating emergency redirection. Are you mobile? Kingston looked at his shoulder. Mobile enough? But I need medical soon. Ramirez stepped in. Ambulance is 5 minutes out. Kingston continued with the operator. Secure the north corridor. They will try to extract their target now that they know I'm delayed. As the call ended, Reyes finally spoke, voice unsteady. Is this going to fall on me? Kingston looked at him without emotion. It already has. Reyes rubbed his hands together, trying to stop them from shaking. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Kingston responded quietly but firmly. Intent doesn't erase impact. Ramirez stepped closer to Reyes. Marcus, you're going to need to give a full statement, and I'm going to tell the truth. Patel will too. Patel nodded, still shaken but clear. We can't hide what happened. Not this time. Reyes swallowed hard. My career. His voice faded. Kingston answered. Your career didn't get ruined today. It started long before that. When you stopped listening, stopped learning, and stopped trusting your own training. Today is just the first time the consequences caught up. Reyes looked away, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Another message crackled through the radio. Tactical units approaching. Perimeter control beginning. Sniper position suspected but not confirmed. Kingston steadied himself for transport as Ramirez tightened pressure on his injury. He spoke once more, not to shame Reyes but to state the unavoidable truth. This isn't just a bad stop. It's a catastrophic breach, and everything that comes next will trace back to the moment you refused to look at a badge. Reyes didn't argue. He couldn't. The weight of failure settled over him, heavier than any reprimand he had ever faced. And the city had not yet seen the full fallout of what that moment had unleashed. The first video hit social media before Kingston even reached the ambulance. Lisa Chen uploaded it from her phone with a single caption asking why a federal officer was being held at gunpoint by LAPD within minutes. The clip spread across platforms, picked up by accounts that monitored police encounters in real time. A teenager posted the second angle, showing Kingston raising his hands peacefully while Reyes shouted threats that had no grounding in protocol. The two videos together told a story clearer than anything the department could release. Viewers reacted instantly, questioning the officer's behavior, questioning the lack of verification, questioning why a man who remained cooperative from the start ended up bleeding from a sniper's bullet. Online debates escalated into outrage. The number rose fast. 1 million views, 2 million, 5 million before the first hour ended. The hashtag tied to the intersection climbed to the #1 trend in the country. While paramedics treated Kingston's shoulder, Ramirez kept checking her phone, stunned at the speed of the public reaction. "Marcus is already all over the internet," she said quietly, showing Kingston the screen. He didn't need to watch. He knew how it looked. A calm man with his hands visible, an officer refusing to verify ID, a gun held far too close. The world had seen the moment he tried to de-escalate and the moment Reyes ignored every attempt at reason. Kingston closed his eyes briefly, not out of exhaustion, but because he understood the weight the video now carried. It was no longer a local incident. It had become evidence. The fallout struck Reyes even faster. Someone leaked his name, then his badge number, then his disciplinary record. Another user posted screenshots from old complaints. A separate account found his divorce documents. Someone else posted the address of his apartment building. By the time Reyes returned to the station, hundreds of strangers had already written comments about his past, his judgment, his family, and his fitness for the badge. He tried to turn off his phone, but the messages kept coming. "You're done. You're dangerous. You need to get off the street." His wife called, voice shaking. "I'm leaving the house. Your name is everywhere. Someone posted a photo of our son's school. I can't stay here." Reyes didn't know what to say. His anger collapsed into fear. He told her he would fix it. She didn't believe him. Meanwhile, crowds formed outside LAPD headquarters faster than anyone expected. It began with a few hundred people holding signs and chanting. Then thousands arrived. Some came because they recognized the pattern. Others came because they saw a federal officer treated the same way many civilians had been treated before. Kingston, bandaged but stable, tried to avoid the noise, but his ambulance route passed near the crowd, and he saw a movement growing far beyond him. People wanted answers. They wanted accountability. They wanted the department to explain how an officer with a long list of complaints had been allowed to operate unchecked. The chants grew louder, echoing into the street as additional videos circulated showing Fabio's scenes of the stop. Kingston's patience, Reyes's hostility, Ramirez's late arrival, the sniper's bullet that turned an unlawful stop into a life-threatening situation. Inside the hospital, Kingston received stitches and basic treatment. A nurse asked him if he needed anything. He asked for quiet, but quiet didn't last long. Anxious families questioned the staff. Wanting information, media outlets contacted the hospital. Calls from Washington arrived. Agents asked for updates. Supervisors demanded briefings. Kingston spoke little, choosing his words carefully. He understood that one wrong phrase could escalate what was already becoming a national story. Hours later, as the protests outside grew tense, a young girl became separated from her mother in the crowd. Tear gas drifted into the street after officers attempted to disperse a group near the front lines. The girl began crying, coughing, disoriented. Kingston saw her while leaving the hospital with an aide, his shoulder still bandaged. He moved instinctively toward her, shielding her with his body as the gas intensified. He lifted her into his arms and carried her toward the nearest medic station, speaking softly to keep her calm. "You're safe. I've got you. We'll find your mother." Once the medic took her in, a volunteer recognized Kingston. That's the man from the video. Within minutes, another clip of Kingston rescuing the girl circulated online, reframing him not just as a victim of the stop, but as someone who kept others safe even while wounded. The mayor eventually held a press conference, attempting to contain the situation. He called the incident an isolated lapse in judgment and urged the public to remain calm. The phrasing ignited the opposite reaction. Podcasters, Journalists and community leaders criticized him for minimizing the danger Kingston faced. A local reporter confronted him on camera. "How is it isolated when the officer had 20 prior complaints?" another asked. "Why was a federal officer treated like a suspect from the start?" The mayor repeated talking points his staff prepared, but they rang hollow. The crowd outside grew louder, angrier, more unified in its demand for accountability. Inside LAPD headquarters, Captain Morales held an emergency meeting with supervisors. She reviewed the footage repeatedly, each time pausing on the moments where Reyes dismissed Kingston's attempts at identification. The instant he opened the encrypted phone, the shock in his face when the sniper fired. She knew the department couldn't hide behind policy. Reyes's actions violated multiple procedures. The public already understood that. Morales faced a decision between institutional loyalty and moral clarity. She chose clarity. She instructed Internal Affairs to begin a full investigation, with no protections for Reyes. Reyes sat alone in a small break room. His uniform rumpled, his phone still buzzing with messages he refused to open. He replayed the encounter in his mind, each frame clearer than the last. He heard himself shouting. He saw Kingston's calm expression. He saw the gun he never should have touched. He felt the moment the sniper bullet hit the car and realized it was linked to his choices. The weight of consequences finally settled in, heavier than anything he had carried before. For the first time, he didn't defend himself. He didn't justify his actions. He didn't blame a system or a memory. He only whispered, "What have I done?" Kingston remained at the hospital for observation. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the bandage around his shoulder. He wasn't angry. He wasn't shaken. He was aware. He understood this moment was larger than him, larger than Reyes, larger than any single stop. It reflected a fracture in policing that ran deeper than one officer's judgment. He knew the country was watching, and he knew the next steps, in courtrooms, in policy rooms, in communities, would shape far more than headlines. The protests continued into the night. Voices demanded truth, and the city braced for the next wave of reckoning. The federal indictment came faster than anyone expected. After weeks of investigation, the Department of Justice announced 4 felony charges against Officer Marcus Reyes: deprivation of rights under color of law, illegal search and seizure, false statements to investigators, and endangering national security through the exposure of an active federal operation. The case moved to U.S. District Court in February. From the moment the trial began, it was clear that the government intended to present every detail without hesitation. Prosecutors opened by stating that this was not a moment of poor judgment, but a chain of deliberate decisions rooted in bias, disregard for procedure, and refusal to verify a federal officer's identity. Reyes sat beside his attorney, shoulders curled inward, as if trying to make himself smaller. The courtroom listened to the first witness, an evidence technician who authenticated both viral videos. The technician explained that the angles came from 2 independent sources, one from Lisa Chen's phone, one from 16-year-old Tyler Brooks's camera, and that the recordings contained no edits, interruptions, or alterations. The judge accepted the videos into evidence. When they played, the courtroom grew still. The jury leaned forward as Kingston appeared on screen with his hands visible, his tone respectful, his requests consistent. Then Reyes appeared, issuing commands without verifying identity, searching the vehicle without cause, and lifting the encrypted phone moments before the sniper shot. Gasps entered the gallery at the sound of the gunfire. The prosecutor paused the video and asked the jury to note the exact position of Kingston's hands. Every juror nodded. Next came the radio logs. A forensic analyst walked through each timestamp, explaining how the cartel's monitoring system captured the open signal the moment Reyes activated the phone. Traces confirmed that the leak originated from the stop site. At the exact second, Reyes pulled the phone from Kingston's vehicle. The analyst stated plainly, "This breach directly enabled the sniper attack." Reyes's attorney attempted to object, arguing that the analyst could not prove intent. The prosecutor responded, "We are proving negligence, recklessness, and willful disregard." The judge allowed the testimony. Officer Patel took the stand next. He looked nervous, adjusting his glasses as he began. He confirmed that Reyes refused to verify Kingston's badge despite repeated warnings. He explained his own fear of contradicting a senior officer and how that fear almost prevented him from calling in the emergency. When asked why he hesitated, Patel said, "I didn't want to get in trouble. I should have spoken sooner. I regret that." His honesty carried weight. Even Reyes lowered his gaze. Then Officer Ramirez stood to testify. She did not hesitate. Her voice was steady, direct, and grounded. She stated that she arrived on scene and immediately saw Kingston bleeding from his shoulder. She confirmed that Reyes never requested verification, never contacted a supervisor, and never followed protocol. The prosecutor asked, "Officer Ramirez, what did you feel when you realized a federal officer had been shot because of a preventable error?" Ramirez swallowed and answered, "I felt ashamed. I stayed quiet too long about his behavior. We all did." Her eyes filled, but her voice never broke. "He needed help years ago, and no one made him get it." Defense counsel objected to the emotional tone, but the judge allowed her to continue. Ramirez added, "I'm telling the truth because I want this department to stop losing good people to bad habits." When Kingston entered the courtroom, there was a shift in energy. He moved carefully, his shoulder still stiff from the injury. He took the oath, sat upright, and spoke without anger. He described the event step by step, using the same calm precision he used during federal briefings. He explained how he announced his identity, how he kept his hands visible, how he asked for verification, and how Reyes refused every reasonable attempt to de-escalate. He recounted the moment Reyes opened the encrypted phone and the instant he felt the bullet tear through the air. Then he spoke about being profiled at 17. "I told my grandson about that moment. I told him to stay calm and trust the law. And on that day, I had to live through the same lesson again." A few jurors wiped their eyes. The defense attempted to frame Reyes as a traumatized officer acting under stress. They showed a psychological evaluation noting unresolved childhood trauma related to his father's death. The prosecutor did not dispute the trauma, but clarified its limits. "Trauma can explain behavior," she said, "but it cannot excuse constitutional violations. Trauma does not grant authority to ignore badges, to ignore procedure, or to ignore a federal operation," she concluded. Mr. Kingston cooperated. Mr. Reyes did not. Reyes took the stand against his attorney's advice. His voice shook as he tried to explain his actions. "I thought he was lying," he said. "I thought he was reaching for something. I thought he was going to hurt me," the prosecutor asked. "What did he do that made you think that?" Reyes hesitated, unable to name a single action. "I don't know. It just felt wrong." The prosecutor pressed further. "Did he raise his voice? No. Did he resist? No. Did he refuse any command you gave? No. So your fear was not based on his behavior." Reyes looked down and whispered, "I guess not." Closing argument sealed the outcome. The prosecution argued that the badge itself was the moment of truth. Verification takes seconds. The attorney said, "This officer had 10 years of training and still refused to take those seconds." The defense urged compassion, but the evidence outweighed sympathy. When the jury returned, no one breathed. The foreperson stood and read the verdict slowly. Guilty on all 4 felony counts. Reyes closed his eyes, his shoulders collapsing inward. Kingston remained composed, neither celebrating nor showing relief. He simply nodded once, as if acknowledging the gravity of the moment. The judge scheduled sentencing. Kingston exited the courtroom quietly, aware that justice had begun, but not finished. The city waited for consequences. The department braced for scrutiny, and Reyes, now convicted, faced the long fall that would unravel the last pieces of the life he once held together. When the sentence was announced, Reyes did not react. The judge stated 30 months at FCI Terminal Island, along with restitution and mandatory counseling. His attorney whispered that he should acknowledge the court. But Reyes couldn't lift his head. The sound of the verdict repeated in his mind until it felt like a permanent echo. Kingston watched from the gallery, steady and quiet, his expression unchanged. He did not celebrate. He did not grimace. He simply observed the moment with the same disciplined composure he carried through every chapter of his career. The courtroom emptied slowly, leaving Reyes at the table trying to absorb the truth that everything he once relied on had collapsed. He lost his badge the next morning. The department processed his termination without ceremony. No farewell, no handshake. His personnel file closed with a long list of unresolved complaints and a final criminal conviction. His pension evaporated under the weight of the restitution order. His attorney explained the number again, reminding him that the $7 million settlement awarded to Kingston would follow him for life. Reyes barely understood the words. He kept staring at the letter that said his benefits were revoked. His wife filed for full custody before the week ended. Her petition cited safety concerns, emotional instability, and national attention that made their family a target. The judge granted her temporary sole custody immediately. Reyes saw the decision written in a single sentence. His son would no longer carry his last name. The moment he read that, his knees weakened. He sat on the edge of the courthouse bench and covered his face, realizing he had lost not only the badge, but also the only person he hoped to protect from his own failures. Life after sentencing unfolded in pieces rather than events. His bank accounts drained under legal fees. His landlord served an eviction notice. The officers who once worked beside him avoided eye contact when he passed through the station to sign release papers. No one said his name. No one offered help. Some whispered, but not in sympathy. His fall had become a warning story, the kind of cautionary tale departments use to remind new recruits what unchecked fear could become. After prison intake processing, Reyes found that 30 months was a long time when regret served as the only company. He spent most days replaying the stop, searching for a moment he could justify. He couldn't find one. He tried to blame stress, training, his father's death, but each explanation collapsed under its own weight. The truth was simpler and harder. He acted out of fear he never confronted, and someone paid a price he never intended but unquestionably caused. When he was released, he took a job as mall security because no law enforcement adjacent company would hire him. The manager hired him only after recognizing him from the case and offered $12 an hour with no benefits. Reyes accepted without argument. He walked the halls, avoiding eye contact with customers who stared a little too long. One evening, a group of young men recognized him from the videos. They followed him, recorded him, mocked him, then cornered him behind a storage corridor. One pushed him, another hit him, a third joined. By the time mall officers intervened, Reyes lay curled against a wall with bruises across his ribs and a trembling in his hands he couldn't stop. He didn't file a report. Shame weighed heavier than the pain. The beating pushed him toward alcohol. Alcohol pushed him toward the street. Within months, he slept behind closed storefronts and bus stations, carrying everything he owned in a torn duffel bag. He told himself he was surviving. But surviving had become a fragile routine of avoiding crowds, asking for spare change, and pretending the past was further away than it truly was. His brother offered to let him sleep on the couch, but Reyes refused, unwilling to bring his humiliation into someone else's home. He drifted instead, each day shaped by the memory of a single moment that destroyed the life he once believed was stable. While Reyes unraveled, Kingston rebuilt. His injury healed slowly, leaving a faint scar across his shoulder, a reminder of the day the job nearly took his life. He returned to work after a short recovery, but he didn't return to the same role. Something shifted inside him. The experience forced him to confront how deeply prejudice still shaped outcomes in a city that claimed progress, instead of returning fully to field operations. He asked for permission to build an initiative that addressed exactly that problem. His supervisors approved without hesitation. He named it the Sunset Justice Fund. Its mission was simple: provide legal support, mental health access, and community training for people affected by wrongful stops or discriminatory policing. Kingston spent hours writing proposals, vetting advisors, and meeting with attorneys willing to volunteer their time. When the fund opened, the first case it supported involved a teenager pulled over while walking home with friends. Kingston met the boy and offered reassurance. "You didn't deserve that," he said softly, "and you're not alone." The boy nodded, holding back tears. Universities invited Kingston to speak about the incident. He traveled to 50 campuses over the next year, telling students about the responsibility that comes with authority and the cost of ignoring accountability. He spoke openly about being profiled at 17, about the fear he felt on Sunset Boulevard, and about how one officer's unresolved trauma set off a chain that could have cost multiple lives. Students listened. Older audiences asked questions. Kingston answered each one carefully, emphasizing that justice wasn't only a courtroom outcome but a series of choices made every day. During his recovery, he began writing a memoir, not about the sniper attack, not about the settlement, but about the years leading up to it, the moments that shaped his values, the cases that tested his limits, and the lessons he wanted his grandchildren to inherit. He titled it From Shadows to Sunrise, explaining that the sunrise represented the possibility of clarity even after the hardest night. The book sold modestly but reached the people it needed to reach. Letters arrived from readers across the country, thanking him for giving words to experiences they felt but never understood how to articulate. Despite all the public attention, Kingston did not celebrate Reyes's downfall. He never spoke about him with anger. When asked in interviews what he felt toward the man who caused his injury, Kingston answered calmly, "I don't hate him. I don't excuse him. I see someone who needed help long before he hurt me. Accountability and compassion are not opposites." By the end of the year, Kingston stood at the center of a growing national conversation about policing, trauma, and reform. Reyes stood outside a homeless shelter wondering how his life had fractured so completely. Both men lived with consequences shaped by the same 35 minutes, but only one of them found a way to turn that moment into something that reached beyond pain. The other continued searching for a way to understand the damage he caused and the damage he carried. And the story was not finished yet. 6 months after the verdict, the Department of Justice finalized a consent decree over the LAPD that changed the department from top to bottom. The agreement required mandatory AI-supported body cameras on every patrol unit, quarterly mental health evaluations for all officers, and an early warning system designed to flag anyone with multiple complaints before problems escalated. Commanders were instructed to intervene early instead of waiting for crises to unfold. The union resisted at first, but the pressure from the public and the size of the settlement made opposition pointless. Every officer received new training emphasizing de-escalation, recognition of trauma, and accountability for misuse of authority. Officers who ignored procedure would be removed, not retrained. The message was direct. The days of unchecked discretion were over. Meanwhile, the Sunset Justice Fund expanded faster than Kingston expected. Calls poured in from people who experienced similar treatment but never had the resources to fight back. His board approved grants for legal representation, counseling, and community mediation programs. Kingston met with families who had lost trust in the system and helped them navigate the slow process of filing complaints. He reminded each of them that accountability did not erase pain, but could prevent the next tragedy. Community groups partnered with the fund to host workshops where residents and officers spoke openly about fears both sides carried. Kingston attended many of those meetings and listened more than he spoke. His presence mattered because he carried the credibility of both a federal badge and personal experience. Despite the progress, one unresolved thread stayed in his mind. He knew he had to confront it before moving forward. One morning, he asked for permission to visit FCI Terminal Island to see Reyes. The warden approved the request because Kingston remained the victim in the case and acted with professionalism throughout the investigation. When Kingston entered the visitation room, Reyes was already seated, shoulders slumped, hands clasped, eyes hollow from months of confinement and regret. He didn't look like a man preparing to defend himself. He looked like someone bracing for a truth he feared to face. Reyes spoke first. "I didn't think you'd ever come." Kingston sat across from him without rushing. "I came because unfinished chapters create more damage than the ones we close." Reyes nodded slowly. "I know I ruined your life that day." Kingston shook his head gently. "You didn't ruin my life. You changed it." "That's different. Life keeps moving." Reyes's voice trembled. "I wasn't trying to hurt you. I swear I wasn't. I saw you, and something in me snapped. I saw danger in everything. I saw my father dying all over again. I thought acting fast would save me, but all it did was destroy everything I had left." Kingston didn't interrupt. He recognized the weight of confession. Reyes continued. "The truth is, I failed long before that day. I ignored warnings. I ignored people who cared about me. I ignored therapy. I thought strength meant pushing everything down. But I was living in a storm and pretending I was fine. I wasn't fine. I was drowning." He took a deep breath, fighting to steady his voice. "I thought I was honoring my father by being tough. But now I know I repeated the same fear he tried to protect me from. I didn't lose him that night. I lost myself." Kingston spoke after a quiet moment. "Marcus, accountability doesn't erase the harm, but it gives a chance to face it honestly. What happened to me shouldn't have happened, but what happened to you shouldn't have been ignored either. You needed help, and no one intervened. And when people needed you to be steady, you weren't. That's the part you have to rebuild." Reyes nodded, wiping his eyes. "Do you hate me?" Kingston answered without hesitation. "No. Hate traps people. I don't have room for it. I don't excuse what you did. But I refuse to let your choices define my view of the world." Reyes looked down. "I don't know what to do when I get out," Kingston said. "Start by telling the truth. Not to me, to yourself. And when you find strength again, use it to make sure no one repeats your mistakes." The conversation ended without anger, without forgiveness, but with a clarity both men needed. When Kingston stood to leave, Reyes whispered, "Thank you for coming." Kingston nodded once. "Take care of yourself." In the months that followed, the city adjusted to its new standards. Officers complained about oversight until they saw the early warning system prevent a few near incidents. Supervisors reported fewer disciplinary hearings. Communities began speaking with officers instead of avoiding them. The changes didn't fix everything, but they marked the first real shift in years. Kingston focused on his family. He spent more weekends with his grandchildren, determined to teach them lessons grounded in patience rather than fear. He also continued building the Sunset Justice Fund into something sustainable, ensuring it remained a resource for people long after his career ended. He spoke at a national conference about the importance of confronting trauma before wearing a badge. His comments stayed with the audience. "A badge does not erase fear. It magnifies it if you don't deal with it honestly. One afternoon, he took his oldest grandson to an empty parking lot for driving practice. The boy sat in the driver's seat, gripping the wheel with more confidence than skill. Kingston gave simple, calm instructions. Ease the brake. Look ahead. Pay attention to the people around you. The boy nodded, listening carefully after a few laps. Kingston asked him to pull over. "I want you to remember something," he said. "When a red light flashes behind you, you stop. You stay calm. You listen. Your tone matters. Your hands matter. But there's something else too. When prejudice flashes in front of you, you stop as well. You don't run from it. You face it." "Because running never fixes anything," the boy asked. "Is that what happened to you?" Kingston answered softly. "Yes. And it's what I want you to learn from. So you never have to feel the weight I felt." They sat in silence for a moment. Grandfather and grandson. Two generations shaped by different experiences, but connected by the same hope. Kingston looked ahead, knowing his life had changed forever, but also knowing he had found purpose in the change. The incident did not define him. His response did. And as his grandson restarted the engine, Kingston believed, with quiet certainty, that some lessons could turn even the darkest moments into something worth passing forward. Thank you for spending time with this story. If you found value in it, consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more people.